child psychology, and she's also a lawyer, and she is an international speaker. Not only the speaker, she's also the trainer, and not only of those two, speaker and the trainer, and she is also that author. She has written a lot of books, and very, very good books she has written that, and she already wrote that 50 books. I also got one, so repeatedly again and again we have to read it because it's very, high applicability is there. Whenever we have to do something, we have to consult it, and we can always consult it. That is, she's that 50 books. You can check it out from her website. Her website is www.fredikanbanik.com. You can visit that her website, and in that you can check in whether the books are available or not. But to buy the book, you have to visit Amazon.com. In that Amazon.com you can buy it. This Amazon.com is very much available everywhere. In India also it is available. You can buy it, you can use it, you can you consult all of those. Her way of doing so many strategies to solve many problems, because conflict in even a normal person every day we used to have some conflict. We met so many conflict. So to resolve those conflicts, it is very, very useful. So many things are there. You can apply that are, that's for the problem with the trials and so many others. You can apply those. This is, I would like to tell you that, because not only speaking that, I have it, that book. I know it very well about that, how good is the book. So that's why I could say that. So today that Madam Dr. Frederica Banik is going to give us again. We are very, very happy to have her. During this COVID time, we all are facing a problem. Our Vice Chancellor knows it so well, and he has told me to invite some of my friends who are in India and who are in abroad. So I remember that Dr. Frederica Banik, because I met her in that Toronto, Canada in 2017. I have listened her lectures. I think for 3, 4, 5 times she gives us lectures, and not only the lecture, she has given me her books. And from that, I remember her, how good is the way she is, solving the problem. And this is, I really like it. That's why I remember it. And then I propose her name. Our Vice Chancellor is very kind enough to invite her. So our Vice Chancellor invites her. So today and yesterday, she already gave us 1 hour lecture. And today also is going to give us again that another 1 hour lecture. This is very, very high value. And we are really appreciated that, Madam's your dedication, ma'am. We are really appreciated your dedication. So we don't want to waste time. This is what my Vice Chancellor also told me, that don't waste her time. Okay, so I'm not going to waste her time. Madam will give us a 1 hour lecture. If you have any question or queries, you can write it and she will respond it through email. And you can write it down in a chat book also, but we will not open the time to answer all of those. But whatever the query, the questions you have, you can write down in that Q&A box. That is, we'll send it, and she will be seeing all of those, and she can answer you through the email. So I will say again that regarding the email, no need to inquire about it, that whatever, because we know it, that it is, everything is recorded in emails, everything is recorded in that's your name and then your institution. Through that we'll issue you. It's no need to inquire about it. That is our duty. We will issue your e-certificate, and this is our pleasure to issue that. It's really, to say again that to issue e-certificate, that you have attended that Madam's webinar on positive supervision. That would be a pleasure to issue you that. You have already attended that. Okay, that would be a kind of a gift to you, because we are very happy to have Madam and to be able to hear again her lectures once more. That is, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. We welcome you. So in that, I will welcome our madams. Uh, Ventivan Harti, welcome.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. That's very special. Somebody speaking Dutch in India, eh?
Yes. Yeah, in India, we know at least to welcome you, ma'am.
Oh, thank you very much. Dank je wel.
Yes, ma'am.
Dank je wel. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. And for the invitation to do this second webinar on this time on positive supervision. And I wish I could be present in your beautiful country instead of doing the webinar. But then, well, of course, these are difficult times due to the COVID-19. And well, I think this is the second best option to do the webinar from home. And I guess you're at home as well. So thank you very much for joining. And today the webinar will be about positive supervision for supervisors, facilitators, and peer groups. So I would like to invite everybody to mute themselves, because I can still hear many voices in the background. So if that would be possible, thank you very much. So, well, let's start. We have about 1 hour. So I made a presentation, and I'll talk you through the presentation. If you have any questions, you're very welcome to email your questions to me later on, because I won't have the time to look at the questions during the presentation, unfortunately. So here we go. The PDF of the presentation, maybe that's good to know, of this presentation, and also of yesterday's presentation on positive CBT, positive cognitive behavioral therapy, will be sent to your university and will be available on the website of your university. So you don't have to write everything down, because later on, if you want to read it again, you can actually attain the PDF of these two presentations. So let's start. And some of this webinar might overlap with what you, if you were present yesterday. I'm not from Toronto, although I was teaching at the university there. I am from the Netherlands, well, the Low Countries in Europe, where half of the land is underwater, basically, and we have dikes and dams and these windmills to keep the water out. And if there's one thing that we are famous for in Holland, it's the flowers, it's the tulips. And people from all over the world come to visit our land to see the tulips. So this Netherlands, and this is the place that I live. This is the capital of the Netherlands. This is Amsterdam. It's got lots of very old houses, as you can see. It's a World Heritage Site, because we, in the 15th and 16th century, we had lots of colonies, Indonesia, for instance, and many. So people got very rich from exporting all the things from the colonies, and we've got lots of canals. So whenever you can come over and visit Amsterdam, that will be nice to have a canal boat trip, as you can see in the picture. This is where I live, and I travel the world, like Professor already said. I travel the world for presentations and trainings and talking about the work I do. What we'll do today, just a short overview. We'll start with an application, which I also use with my supervisees and also with my clients, basically. I'll tell you a little bit more on the theoretical side about the paradigm change in supervision. The 4 pillars of positive supervision, my model of positive supervision, it contains 4 pillars, and I'll walk you through all 4. The role of positive supervisor, which might be different from what you've been doing so far. The importance of asking feedback from supervisees, but also from your clients, basically, because we all know that the process of supervision has many similarities of the process when you work with clients. Well, conclusion and a takeaway. And like I said before, unfortunately, we don't have the time to get in to reply to all the questions you may have, but you can please feel free to ask your questions through my email at solutions@frederikebanning.com, and I'll answer you as soon as possible. So we'll start with the sparkling moment. This is what I also ask my supervisees, because I think it's important for them to tell me about what they did right instead only what they did wrong. So I will, please join me in thinking about sparkling moment for yourself. Oh, sorry, going. Sometimes I'm a bit impatient in, okay, here we go again. So what I want you to do is just for yourself. We cannot do this in pairs or in groups because, well, due to the COVID, that's not possible at the moment. But if this would be a live presentation, I would invite you to do this in pairs or in groups. So just for yourself, remember a recent sparkling moment in your work or in your study, a moment when you really felt at your best. Just take a moment to remember a recent sparkling moment in your work or in your study. And ask yourself, what was it that made that moment sparkle? What exactly did you do to make that happen? And look at the details. How exactly did you do that? Just take a little while, 1 or 2 minutes, to remember the sparkling moments and the details of it. And if you find it difficult to find the sparkling moment in your work or your study, you might find a sparkling moment in your private life. At home, with your family, with your friends. And take a while to look at the details of it. What exactly did you do to make that happen? All right, so now if you found one, we'll go to the second part of this application. And that's about compliments and giving yourself a compliment or giving each other compliments. In this case, giving yourself a compliment. So based on what you just remembered, the sparkling moment, reflect for a while, just for a minute, on what you now know about your own excellent competencies, skills, and resources. How did you do that? And then give yourself a nice compliment, or maybe 2. Just for 1 minute. And some people are very good at giving compliments, but giving a compliment to yourself, to others, but giving a compliment to yourself is often a little bit harder. People are not very used of giving themselves a compliment. And then we go on to the last part of this application. And as you know, it's about taking the small steps. We call that in solution-focused terms, we call that the baby steps, the small steps which may lead to big changes, baby steps to big dreams, it says. So based on your recent sparkling moments, the last thing I would like you to do is ask yourself, what small step, what baby step can I take to increase the prospect of even more sparkling moments in my work or in my study or in my private life? Just take a while to consider some progress here. What small step, and really think of small steps, easy small steps you can take to increase the prospect of even more sparkling moments. What can you actually do? And of course, it would be nice to hear the ideas from the people around you. Suppose you were doing peer supervision in a group, or we also call that intervision. You know, it's not really that there's a supervisor available or present. It's just among equals, so to speak. But okay, that's a bit difficult right now. So it's just up to you what small step you can take to increase the prospect of even more sparkling moments. And I really hope that you all gave yourself a nice compliment, or maybe two, and found a baby step, a small step to increase the prospect of even more sparkling moments. So talking about supervision. So what's the goal of supervision? And well, we can talk about supervision in the case of psychotherapy, but this is basically supervision where a more senior member is giving supervision to a more junior member. So this might be also in other organizations, like in a bank or in a shop, but anywhere where a senior is supervising a junior. But in this case, you might say it's in psychotherapy. So the goal of supervision is to enable the more junior members, we call them supervisees, to gain in competence, confidence, and creativity to give their best possible service to their clients. That's the role, that's the goal of supervision. And one of the questions I might ask my supervisees is, so imagine this is the best supervision session you have ever had. How would you know? Or even better, how would your clients know? What would they see you doing or doing differently to notice that this has been the best supervision session you have ever had? It's just one of those questions that I may ask my supervisees at the start of a supervision session. There are many more of those questions, but this is just one example. And the perspective of the clients, it should be how would your clients know instead of how would you clients know. Sorry about that. Using the perspective of your clients instead of using their own perspective. That makes it even stronger. How would your clients know? And basically, in the book that you just saw, some of my supervisees, these were in psychotherapy, but also in the field of mediation, were interviews, and one of them, at the back of the book, these interviews, and one of the supervisees said, assuming that you're learning a profession where your passion lies, supervision is also a place to share enthusiasm for the profession. In this way, supervision becomes a fun part of the training, and experiencing a shared passion creates more meaning in your work. I literally felt the urge to run to the supervision sessions to share new developments and my growth with my supervisor. After enthusiastically sharing an applied technique, she is me, remarked, "Who do you think was more surprised that it worked out so well, you or your client?" And this is a supervisee who had previous supervision, and when she had to go to that supervisor, she later told me she had stomach pain because she was so afraid of all the criticism that supervisor was having. You know, you should have known this, you didn't do well enough, etc., etc. And I think I always say to my supervisors, it should be your party. supervision should be your party. And I think this is one of the things that one of my supervisors said about it. And well, this makes me very happy being a supervisor, you can imagine. So let's talk a little bit about paradigm change in supervision. Because for a long time, supervision was mainly about problems and problem focused. Problem focused in the sense that you know when there's a problem with your clients, or you don't know how to continue with the client, or the clients don't do what you want them to do. This was the fact that you said, okay, this is what I'm going to bring to my supervision. And that's okay, of course. But then supervision should also be about successes and not only about failures or things that go wrong. There are biologists, they're called Histed and other people. They wrote an article and they did research showing that we learn more from our successes than from our failures. And for a long time, it has been said that you learn best from your failures. So this is just not true. From your failures, you learn what not to do. From your successes, you learn what to do. And if I make might compare it with success or failure recipes. So, for instance, if you people are coming over, your friends or your family, and you want to put a really nice meal on the table, what do you actually do? What strategies do you use? Are you going to look at previous failure recipes that you made? Probably not. You're going to look at previous success recipes that you made, your own success recipes, or you might consult a cookbook, and there you might find success recipes of other people, of course. I've never seen a cookbook with failure recipes. I'm sure you didn't. And I wouldn't buy it either. So I will always, when I start supervision, I will ask my supervisors, tell me about your successes. And they know that I'm going to ask them that question. So that means that when they come to me, they know I'm going to ask about their successes and what they actually did to make this success happen. And another supervisor said, positive supervision meant a valuable addition to what she was already doing, because I'm pretty good at unraveling problems. And by doing that, I sometimes forget to look for moments when the problem didn't happen, the exceptions to the problem, or what small steps have been taken in the desired direction. So the positive supervision, she said, is a great addition to working in a problem-focused way that she was used to. Well, this is almost the same as I was talking yesterday. Two sources in my model of positive supervision. We'll go through that quite quickly. Positive psychology. I'm sure you've heard about positive psychology. Yes, sure. It's a focus on deficits and it's a focus on strengths. It's a strengths-based approach. And solution focus is different because it focuses on what works, everything that works. And if it works, especially if it works better, do more of it. If it doesn't work, stop and do something else. And that's different. Sometimes people go on with things that don't work, hoping, and some professionals go on with the same stuff that doesn't work, hoping that in the long end it will actually help. But that's not the case. So if it's not working, stop and do something else. Basically this. I don't have to explain it. Positive psychology is based on well, the most known theory of well-being is the theory of Marty Seligman, one of the founders of positive psychology. It's the PERMA model. It's based on 5 pillars: positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning and accomplishment. And the higher you score on all 5 pillars, the more well-being you will actually have. And if you score very low on all 5, then your well-being will be very low. And it's about knowing your strengths and crafting your life and your work as much as possible, so you can use all these strengths to actually enhance your well-being. And like I said, it's a strengths-based. Again, I do it again. It's a strengths-based approach, positive psychology. And if you want to know your strengths, then you can fill in this VIA, Values and Action Survey of Character Strengths. You can find it on that American website. You have to log in, and then there you can take the test. I guess you can also do it in the Indian language. And then you'll get an overview of your personal 24 character strengths. And not only that, but also with your top 5 personal strengths. And it's especially about the top 5 of personal strengths. One of my top 5 personal strengths is being grateful. Another one is being curious and being interested in the world. And another one of mine is being optimistic. So what's in my top 5 doesn't have to be in your top 5, but it's really nice to do this, and also ask your supervisees to actually, or your clients, to fill out the survey of character strengths, and talk with them about it, and ask them how they are actually applying these strengths and the top 5 of their signature strengths, or how they can apply these strengths more often than they already do. So I would like to invite you to do this. I think about 3 million people already filled out that survey, and it's very nice to see what your personal 24 character strengths are within the top 5. Okay. Well, solution focus is a bit different. It's very goal oriented. Look at that. The first question. Say, imagine this was the best possible supervision session you've ever had. How will you know? It's also a goal-oriented approach. It's finding what works, do more of it. It's about putting positive difference to work. It's a proven, simple, effective approach to change. It's basically the direct to change, and it has been applied and is being applied to psychotherapy, coaching, management, leadership, strategic planning, conflict management, education, sports, etc. A little
Action
film.
Wave presents Turning Problems into Solutions.
If people were cars, fixing people problems would be easy. Check the engine, find the cause of the trouble, replace the faulty part, and move on. But people are not machines. Focusing on problems and their causes is a great way of getting cars back on the road, but it's not much use when you're trying to help people move forward. Take Alex. He wants to step up to a higher management role, but he lacks confidence. Some people might try to help Alex by asking why he feels this way. Perhaps the answer lies in his past.
When I was a child, a teacher humiliated me in front of the class.
Or,
the other kids teased me.
But concentrating on the causes of his problem soon leaves Alex buried under an avalanche of painful memories. He knows why he lacks confidence, but nothing in his life has changed. He still feels just the same. Focusing on problems turns you into an expert in what's wrong. To become an expert in what's right, you have to start thinking about solutions. A helpful question to Alex would be, let's just suppose that something happened and you had all the confidence you needed. What would you be doing differently?
I'd have the courage to be honest with my team when giving appraisals. I'd be able to say what I really think in meetings. I'd be speaking at conferences and enjoying it.
Now that Alex has a picture of how he'd like to be, he has something to work towards. This novel way of turning things upside down is called the solutions focus. Instead of emphasizing what's wrong, why didn't you meet this month's sales target? Solutions talk encourages people to think about what's right. Well done for selling 5 insurance policies last month. How did you manage that? What did you do? People have all the resources they need to make their solutions happen. Some of those resources are inside them, like previous experiences, and others lie within easy reach, like support from other people. It's all about building on success. If something works, do more of it. And if something isn't working, do something different.
So this is just a little film. It was made in Athens, Greece, by a coaching institute where they work in a solution-focused way. And of course, this was in a coaching context, but even so, you can use this in psychotherapy and in supervision as well, of course. So do you remember what was this solution-focused question in the middle? Well, at one point she said, suppose something would happen and you would have all the confidence you needed. What would you be doing differently? And this is a goal-oriented question because she asks about, suppose you have all the confidence you needed, you know, this is the description of your preferred future. Suppose you had all the confidence you needed, what would you do different? And then there's a resume of what that person would do be differently. And then she says, now he has something to work towards. It's an approach goal. And approach goals, there's lots of research being done on approach goals instead of avoidance goals. Where do you want to get away from, or where do you want to go to? The difference in emotions and in cognitions, whether you work with an approach goal, where do you want to get, hey, I want to get away from depression, for instance, or where do you want to go to? I want to go to a life where I feel happy and my mood is okay, etc., etc. And talking about the questions that you ask, whether you're talking, you're doing a problem-focused or solution-focused talk. Just these are a few examples. One of the in problem-focused talk, it's what's wrong here, what's wrong with you, what's not working. On the other hand, in solutions talk, you might say what's right here, what is working. In problem talk, what would you like to see less of? In solutions talk, where would you like to go? What would you like to see more of? How did the problem start? What would you like to see instead of the problem? Or when does the problem end is also a nice question. What did you try so far? Or what did you do so far that was helpful, even just a little bit? And sometimes they look a little bit the same, but they are not the same. Because if you ask, what did you try so far to solve your problem? You probably get a story of things that didn't work out. And then the client or the supervisor might say, that's why I'm here. That's why I came to you. Whereas if you ask, what did you do so far that was helpful, even just a little bit, you're asking, you're inviting the client or the supervisor to talk about successes, even the little ones. What do you find difficult? What or who might be useful? What will be the easiest step for you? What is stopping you is a very problem-focused question. How will you succeed in is a solution-focused one. Why did you do that? Instead of, you must have a good reason, please tell me more. When's the problem there? Or solution talk is when is the problem less or even gone for a little while. And these are just a few examples of the shift in focus in what kind of questions you ask your clients or your supervisees. For instance, regarding the last one, I had a supervisee, and she said to me, you know, what I find difficult is that sometimes I have these very dominant clients, and I find it very difficult to stop the session on time, especially with that kind of clients. So I might, I might have, at that point, I have a choice as a supervisor, and I might say, okay, how come? How come you find it difficult? Looking for causes and effects. But I didn't do that. I said, okay, so when do you already succeed, especially with those clients, to end the session on time? Because there are always exceptions. And then she said, yeah, sometimes I can already do that. And I said, okay, so how do you do that? What do you actually do to make that happen? And then she said, okay, so I could do that more often. Find what works and do more of it. And well, there are many solution-focused questions, but basically, if you have these four, you can do any solution-focused conversation. What are your best hopes from this supervision, a whole supervision or session? Another question is that what difference will that make? What will your life or your work look like when these hopes are met? Third one is what works? What are you already doing? And what have you done that might help these hopes become reality? Is the third one. And the last one is what will be next signs of progress? Or sometimes you might say, what will be your next steps? But sometimes you don't even have to do that. Just asking what will be next signs of progress. And if you have these four questions, well, here are basically 101 for anxiety, depression, and trauma. But these are the four basic solution-focused questions which you may use to do any solution-focused conversations. Best hopes, what difference will it make, what works, and what will be next signs of progress. And this is the big book. And we did some research on this, and and we found that, well, positive psychology and solution focus are not the same things, they're different enterprises, but the conclusion is that both are aiming to help clients to have a better future and their fields could benefit from each other. Solution focus from positive psychology research and practice, and positive psychology from the SF research and using the SF language, all the questions that are known in solution focus. And solution focus may be more art than science, and positive psychology more science than art, but they overlap fruitfully in any practical quest for human flourishing. And if you want to have a look at these articles, you can go to my website, www.frederikbanning.com, and you can find many of these articles, and you can download them for free if you are interested in knowing a bit more about this comparison between solution focus and positive psychology. So now on to the four pillars of the positive supervision. Here they are. And I'll walk you through all four. One is the goal formulation. 2 is finding competency. 3 is working on progress. And 4 is reflection. These are the four pillars of my model of positive supervision. So we'll start with number 1, the goal formulation. And I've said this before as well. You can download this article also on my website. I wrote this one with an American coach who's working in a solution-focused way. Suppose you're the taxi driver. Here you are. So the first question, what's the first question you ask your clients when they enter your car? It's probably, where do you want to go to instead of where you're coming from? What's your destination? So that's the goal formulation. And if you don't have the goal formulated in a good sense, then how can you actually know that you're heading in the right direction? Well, suppose you're the taxi driver again, and somebody gets in your car and you say, okay, where to? Being the taxi driver, and the other person says, well, I don't know. What do you actually do? Do you throw somebody out of the taxi? Say, or are you going to ask some questions such as, well, what part do you know, or who might be useful, or might be helpful to know, or whatever. And suppose somebody gets into your car, you're the taxi driver again, and you say, okay, where to? And the client says, not the airport. What will you do? You will probably ask one question, and that's, where do you want to go to? And that's many people come in, and supervisees sometimes also come in, and clients come in saying, I do not want to be so depressed anymore. I do not want to have all these arguments with my partner anymore. I do not talking in a negative way, but you cannot help people with what they do not want. You can only help people with what they do want. So the goal should be stated in positive, concrete, and realistic terms. And sometimes I use this, sometimes I ask my clients, also supervisees, do you sometimes make a shopping list when you go to the supermarket? And many people say, yeah, I do. And then I ask them, so are you going to write down on that list all the things that you're not going to buy in the supermarket? People say, no, of course not, because that might be a very, very long list, because in a supermarket, you might buy around 5,000 things that you don't want to buy. Of course, you're on your shopping list, you write the things that you do want to buy. And this is a metaphor that everybody understands. So you can only help people with what they do want and not with what they don't want. So a nice question might be, what would you like to have instead of the problem? So for instance, if somebody comes in and has a burnout or is depressed or whatever, what do you want to have instead of that? And then ask them, invite them to give a description of how their better and new life will look like. This is another supervisee. Instead of describing the client's problem, my supervisor, which was me again, asked, so what's their goal? What's the goal of that client? What will be the best outcome for this client? And this sounds very straightforward, yet I noticed that I do not always ask this question explicitly. Therefore, my clients and I sometimes have different goals in mind. And if we talk about goals, it, of course, like this example, it might be the goal of the client. So when does the client not have to come to you anymore? What will be the best result of this therapy, psychotherapy? But also, if a supervisee wants to bring in a case, my first question will be, what is the goal of you talking about this case? What will be the best result for you talking about this case? So how will you know that it has been useful that we discuss this case? That is the first question I will always ask. Might be the session, it might be the goal of the total supervision. What will be the best result here? What will be the best outcome here? That's what I meant when I talked about it's a goal-oriented approach. So basically you start at the end. What is the best outcome here? What's the best result? The second pillar is about competency, finding competency. And this is what one of the supervisees said. I was surprised. We did not look at my weaknesses, but rather at my competencies. I suddenly felt a lot more capable in my work than I previously thought I was. And I became even more surprised when the supervisor explained to me what the purpose of supervision is: to feel competent in your profession and be able to work independently as a professional. So just for a moment, I don't know, here you see these animals, and this guy says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And here you see a monkey and a penguin and an elephant and a fishbowl and whatever, and a dog, and what kind of animals, that kind of sea lion. Because Einstein already said everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. I'm sure you've seen that quote by Einstein before. So just for 1 minute, just for yourself, and it's very nice to do this in your teams as well, or if you do peer supervision. Which 3 strengths have brought you to where you are now in your profession or in your study? Just take a minute to think about your own personal strengths. Which 3 strengths have brought you to where you are now in your profession or your study? For instance, you might say, well, perseverance. You know, I keep at the task, even if things are hard, I keep on doing it until I succeed. Or it might be something else. Just for yourself, which 3 strengths have brought you to where you are today in your profession or in your study? And I'm sure you have more than 3, but just because of the time, we'll keep it at 3. And of course, if you fill out the VIA survey of character strengths I was talking about, and you'll find the 24 personal strengths which you possess, you might also look at those 24 strengths and pick a few from there. But maybe that's not necessary because you just know which 3 strengths have brought you to where you are now in your profession or your study. And if you're working in a team or in a group, it's very nice to discuss these strengths among yourselves and see how you can craft a team where everybody can use their top 5 personal strengths. So this is also useful in organizations. Okay. Another way to find competences is to look at exceptions, because there are always exceptions. All problems have exceptions. Those times when the problem could have happened, but somehow did not. And looking for these exceptions is critical for building further solutions. Find out when the solution is already happening, because all problems have exceptions. Make use of what there is. And this is, well, we talked about it because in positive CBT, we ask people to keep a diary of the better moments, a diary of these exceptions, because clients and also supervisees look at the problem. They look at the problem and they don't look at exceptions. And therapists and supervisees, they do it the other way around. They look at the exceptions as primary, and interventions are meant to help clients and supervisees make a similar inversion. So for instance, remember the supervisee I was talking about, and she said, okay, I find it difficult to end the session on time when I have dominant clients. I was asking her about exceptions. So when do you already succeed in stopping your session on time, even if it's a dominant client? And it's basically a very different perspective than asking, why is this the way it is? What does it say about you? I'm not so interested in the why. I'm more interested in the how. Well, pillar 3 is working on progress. There are many ways of working on progress, and in the book there are about 40 or 50 different ways. This is just one that only takes a couple of minutes, your most challenging case. You can do this in pairs, or you can do this plenary when you're working, when you do a peer supervision. You don't need any background information. And there are basically 2 questions. Question 1 is, how would you rate the last session with this client or these clients if 10 means the session was going really well and 0 was the opposite? And if it's a very challenging case, chances are big that your supervisee might say, well, last session, well, a 4, for instance, or a 3 on a scale from 10 to 0. And the second question is, suppose that at the end of the next session, your rating is 1 point higher, so it's no longer a 4 but a 5. What will you have done differently? And what else? And what else? And what else? And it's different from, so sometimes people might say, well, the client should do things differently. But this is not about the client, this is about you. What will you have done differently? And It's basically these two questions. It takes 5, max 10 minutes. You can do it. You can do it in pairs. You can do it in plenary, and it's a very short way to actually ask the supervisee themselves what they have done differently. Suppose at the end of the next session, the rating will be 1 point higher. You can also use the perspectives of your clients to say, suppose at the end of the next session, the client's rating is 1 point higher. What will the client see you have done differently? Take the perspective of the client. And only after that, you might ask, what ideas do the others have? And then you go on to the second most challenging case with another colleague, if you do it in a group. And it means that in 1 hour, you might do, let's say, 6 or 7, and you do it in pairs, you might do 6 or 7 cases in 1 hour. And if you do it in pairs, because it's not so difficult to ask this question. So if you have a group and you do it in pairs and there are more people in the room, that means that you might maybe do even 20 cases in 1 hour. And this is quite different from what you might be used to, taking lots of time for just one case. This is just one way of working on progress. One of the supervisors said, if I compare this approach with traditional problem-focused supervision, the difference lies mainly in 2 points. 1, the motivational effect the focus on positive cognitions and behavior has, and the confidence in my own competency to devise appropriate solutions. Changing this focus reinforces my positive emotions. It strengthens my hope of a positive outcome and my confidence that this is feasible using small steps forward. There are many more models. This is another work, a model you might know, in past model, and it uses positive relabeling. So I might ask a supervisor, what exactly do you and clients do during the session? What motivation would you say the client has if you were to vent your frustrations to me or a colleague? They don't want to do anything, you know, they're saying they want to change, but they really don't. I'm irritated. And then how does your interpretation cause you to react in the same manner? How might you look at it differently? What more positive motivation might the client have than you have been thinking until now? So when you were to act in accordance with a different interpretation, what would you do differently? What difference will that make for yourself and for the client? How will the next session go better? This is another way of asking the supervisee and not talking with us as supervisee over the client that isn't behaving, so to speak, but it's about the supervisees themselves and what they might do differently in order to restore the relationship with their clients and have a better outcome. And the last pillar is about reflection, your best session. This is one, you can do this in pairs as well. You don't need any background information. Well, you can ask yourself or each other, what was your best session recently? What made it such a good session? How did you achieve that? What does it say about you and your competencies? And what you might do as well, how will you be able to do that more often? And this is just one way of reflection. Talking about your best session recently. And like I said before, you learn more from your successes than from your failures. The biologists found out. So asking about what was your best session recently, or talking about sparkling moments, what we started out with, the sparkling moments is another way of asking about successes. And of course, you can talk about difficulties and you can talk about failures. Of course, you're not problem phobic, so to speak. But the only thing I would suggest is don't use the whole hour, supervision hour, only to talk about that. And then you as a supervisor are going to give advice on how to do it. Because I think And that's different from problem-focused supervision, that the supervisees are co-experts from the start. Well, the role of the positive supervisors is water the flowers, not the weeds. And maybe you know this one. It's quite a famous one. An American elder, Native American elder, once described his inner struggle. He said, inside of me there are two dogs. One of them is mean and evil, and the other one is good. And the mean dog fights the good dog all the time. I'm sure you've seen that one before. And when his grandson asked him which dog wins, he replied, the dog I feed most. I'm sure you've seen that before. So that's the question I'm going to ask you. Which dog do you feed most as a supervisor or as a psychotherapist? Is that the negative focus on problems, what supervisees do not want, the causes of the problems, the negative emotions, the disadvantages, deficit, risks, failures, and the unwanted or feared future? And we know that negative emotions, they cause less creativity, flexibility, empathy, and resilience. Or do you use this positive focus and do you focus on what supervisees want instead of the problems, exceptions to the problems, positive emotions, advantages, strengths, successes, opportunities, and the preferred future? And we all know, especially by the research that has been done in the positive psychology field by Barbara Fredrickson, positive emotions, they enhance more creativity, flexibility, empathy, and resilience. So as much as possible, as a supervisor, but also as a clinician, I want to be sure that there are positive emotions in the room. Another thing is that I always ask feedback to my supervisees. I also ask feedback from my clients, whether it's in psychotherapy or in coaching or in mediation. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the session rating scale. You can find more about that on www.scottdmiller.com. And this is what I'll show you an example of it. By filling out the session rating scale myself, I really experience what exactly the effect is. At the start, it's strange when a supervisor asks you to provide feedback. Also the question, what can I do differently or better next time to get a higher point on the scale? This is my question to the supervisee, was unfamiliar. The first time I didn't dare to say what that might be. But the next time I did give feedback and it turned out to be very nice. By doing so, we worked more focused on my goals and I got more out of the supervision. It also gives me a good feeling that the supervisor asked me what I want and how I want it. This influences our working relationship in a positive way. So here is an example of how the session rating scale looks like. It's about 4 little lines of exactly 10 centimeters each. It's about the relationship, it's about goals, topics, it's about the approach or method, and it's an overall, on one hand, on one side, I did not feel heard, understood, and respected, and on the right side, I feel heard, understood, and respected. Goals and topics, we did not work or talk about what I wanted to work on or talk about. On the right side, we worked on and talked about what I wanted to work on and talk about. This is a therapist, but you might change it into supervisor's approach. Not a good fit for me. The therapist or supervisor approach is a good fit to me, and the overall. And the session rating scale is a very handy tool, which you might use in supervision, but also in your work as a psychotherapist. And you can find more information on how, where people put the cross or the line when you can be satisfied with it. But I'm sure you've seen this before and know how it works. So, until proven otherwise, we assume that all supervisees want to feel that their work makes a difference in someone's life, want to learn the skills needed to achieve this motivation and commitment, want to be accepted and valued by the organizations they work in, want to identify with the organization's mission and objectives, already possess skills to some degree. They are seen as co-experts and not the person that don't know anything. will, when they feel respected and supported by the organization and their superiors, naturally deal with their clients in the same respectful manner. And I think these are quite important assumptions, and positive assumptions as well. So one of the supervisees said, in problem-focused traditional supervision, I learned from the sharp minds of my supervisors. In positive supervisions, I learned to use my own sharp mind. This helps me to become more independent and more effective in creating and supporting change. And when I read this for the first time after she had done this interview, I was very pleased, because I thought, this is why I am a supervisor. This is why I became a supervisor. To be useful for somebody else to learn to use their own sharp minds instead of listening to other supervisors who are going to tell you exactly what to do. So the conclusion is increasing their successes. That's my job. Inzu Kim Berg, she's from Korea, the co-founder of Solution Focused Brief Therapy, said this about her supervisees: increasing their successes, that's my job. So please take a moment now to, just for yourself, to think of 3 things or ideas you could put to use at your work or your study and or private life, and will tell you that this webinar has been worth your time and energy. Please take a moment to find 3 things or ideas you can take away from this workshop. Take your time. By the way, I also ask my supervisors, what do you take away from today's supervision? Or I ask my clients the same thing, what do you take away? And ask them to name the things. I'm not going to give them a summary. I want them to give me a summary of what they have found important from the conversation. Okay, and because of the time, we're going to conclude this webinar. So if you didn't find 3 things yet, you maybe later on today, you might find the 3 things that you can take away from today. So these are the books in English, and like you've heard before, I don't have a bookstore, but you can buy all these books on the internet or through your local bookstore, of course. So thank you very much for your kind attention. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Just go to my website or my email address, solutions@frederickbanning.com, and I'll answer your questions as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It has been a pleasure for 2 hours from yesterday and today, dedicating your time for the university, for India, and especially for a very small state in Mizoram, India's very small state. It's a pleasure, especially for our department that is very young and thriving, and for a clinical psychologist myself who is very less experienced, really getting to know solution-focused brief therapy through you. That is a pleasure from my side, and for many of my fellow Mizo clinical psychologists as well, I can say that we have benefited a lot, ma'am. And we will get to read more of your books now that we have more experience and more guidance from you, and hoping to please hope to get more emails from us. It has been a pleasure. Dank u wel, ma'am. I don't know if it's the correct pronunciation, but thank you very much. And in Mizo, we call it kalome. So kanlome, all of us are saying, and dank u wel. Yeah, that's in our language in Mizo. Kanlom Lutuk, thank you so much. And especially to our Vice Chancellor, who has been so active and being a part of this webinar throughout, especially these two sessions. Professor KRS Sambasivarao, sir, we are so thankful for you, for always being with us.
Can I just say thanks to Marble Madam? Thank you much for your giving lectures today. I'm very much grateful for your kind concern to our students and people. No, thank you very much, madam. I will be in touch with you through email.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
I hope to see you, and I hope to see you all in person one day.
Yes, sir.
We are really hoping for that, ma'am. Looking forward. And this is a sparkling moment for the university as well, ma'am. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And to all, and especially to our head of the department, Professor Zo Kaitwangi, with her active participation, we are able to have a wonderful and esteemed speaker with us. And thank you so much, ma'am. And especially the success of the webinar, our computer center, the people in charge of our computer center have been so cooperative, and especially to our special guests who have always been so active. We have more than 500 viewers, ma'am, who are attending this session. So the success of this webinar is because of the audience, the wonderful audience who are actively participating throughout these 2 days. Yes, and we have the link on YouTube. You can check out our university's YouTube channel if you want to review and relearn what has been taught today and the day before. Thank you so much, everyone. And ma'am, hoping to get back to you soon via email as well.
Okay.
So I'm ending the session, ma'am.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, madam. Bye.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, madam, you have to.
Bye.
Hello. Okay, madam.
Yes, sir.
Hello. Madam, you have to right side corner, you have to end it and end for all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We'll do it that, sir. No problem. We'll do it, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.